Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's your boy Keith the Guy, and we got some fish to fry, and I got some real exciting news for you guys. Now, I know I'm a little late to the party, but you know what they say, I'm not always there when you call, but I'm always on time. Or is that the other way around in my case? Either way, I got some real exciting news for you guys, and the exciting news is I got my hands on some Apple log footage using the iPhone 15. Now, I own the iPhone 13 because Apple doesn't really change anything with their phones, but this time around, they went ahead and implemented log footage into their 15. So what I went ahead and did is I went to the Apple store, the nearby Apple store, snuck in there. Well, you can't really sneak in there, you can walk right in. I utilized the iPhone 15s that were on display, did some test shots in the store, went ahead, airdropped it to my iPhone 13, and now I have access to it. Now we're gonna be utilizing DaVinci Resolve to color grade our footage today. Now I'm sure you could use it in Premiere Pro, and I know for no doubt in my mind that you could use it in Final Cut because, you know, it's an Apple program, why not? But my color grade of choice when it comes down to it is DaVinci Resolve. So we're gonna hop right into this computer and I'm gonna shut up and we're gonna go ahead and get started. And let's see if the Apple log footage can compare to like S-Log or C-Log or P-Log or V-Log or all the logs out there in the world. Okay, so we gotta move quickly because they're watching and we're 00 agents. So the first thing I'm gonna need you to do is go into settings. Once you've infiltrated settings, the next thing you're going to need to do is go to camera. Once you get into cameras, do not do 4K at 60 frames per second. I repeat, do not do 4K at 60 frames per second. Solely because you're going to need an external drive for that. So we're going to pick either 4K at 24 or 4K at 30 frames per second. I mean, you could use HD, but if you do, you might be a little lame for that. Next, once we get that done, we're gonna scroll down, and for personal preferences, I turn on enhanced stabilization along with HDR video, and then I lock my white balance. Once you got the recording videos in place, the next thing you're going to need to do is crucial. If you don't do this, you will fail the mission. The next thing you're going to do is go to formats. Once you go into formats, leave it at high efficiency and turn on Pro, RAW, and resolution control. Then, where it says video capture, turn on Apple Pro Res. And then for encoding, you're not going to use HDR. You're not going to use SDR. It's going to be log. After that, quickly escape and you have successfully accomplished the mission. Great job, young chap. Well, this is what log footage usually looks like, flat and unamusing. Camera companies such as Sony, Canon, Panasonic, Nikon, whatever, have worked long and hard to create their own version of log. Now, why is that? Well, the main reason why we shoot in log, just to make it simple, is because this flat profile gives us so much dynamic range in between the highlights and the shadows. So when it comes down to post-production, we have a lot more to work with compared to a baked-in camera look. So that's why it's such a great deal that a phone can actually shoot in log now. So without further ado, let's hop right into color grading and let's see how well Apple log really is. All right, welcome back, guys. Now we got DaVinci Resolve all fired up and ready to go, and we got our footage right in our timeline and we're ready to color grade. So the first thing I like to do is make sure that I got my settings, my project settings proper, and in a way where I can get the optimal color grade out of my footage. Now, I like to use DaVinci YRGB. Now you can use DaVinci YRGB color managed, but I'm gonna make it real simple today because there's not really too much going on in our frame. As you could see, it's just a shot of these phones along with somebody out of the frame. And if I push a little bit further, it's not too much going on here either than the word iPhone 15 and the head of some complete strangers. I'm just gonna stick to DaVinci YRGB. Now we're gonna look at our timeline color space. And we're not gonna check off use separate color space and gamma. We're gonna keep that the same. So we're going to change this from Rec 709 just to Rec 709 Gamma 2.4 because that's where a lot of, you know, online footage lays on. Now, some people like to use 2.2, some people just like to use regular Rec 709. I've been taught to learn Gamma 2.4. I'm sure you probably learned it in other areas to use 2.2 or just regular Rec 709 or even Rec 709A if you're a Mac user. But I like to stick to Gamma 2.4. We're gonna stick to same as timeline and we're gonna press save. And we're just gonna okay all of this. I'm gonna turn off the clip tab just to make this a little bit bigger because I'm just grading on my MacBook right now and I just need as much space as possible. But I want you guys to bring your attention to the waveform. We got a lot of space to play with in the highlights, along with the lights, along with the shadows and the darks. That's the key and the greatness of log. Now there's many ways to initially attack this clip. Now you can manually input your contrast, your saturation and things of that nature, or you can transform it. Now the great thing about DaVinci Resolve is it has a thing called color space transform, which I love to use often. And believe it or not, Aces Transform works with Apple Log. Now, the reason why we don't use Aces Transform a lot is because it's not compatible with every camera yet. But this is basically what Hollywood loves to use is Aces. So today, I'm gonna go ahead and play with Aces because I think it's a little bit more simple than Color Space Transform. As a matter of fact, I'm just gonna show you real quick with Color Space Transform and then we're gonna move on with Aces. So our input color space is going to be Rec 2020. Our input is going to be Apple Log, and then you could stick to just use timeline for both of them. I mean, you could change it if you want to like Rec 709 and then Gamma 2.4, but that's not going to change anything because we already fixed that in our project settings. So that's how you would use it using Color Space Transform. And if you don't want to use Rec 2020, you can just go to use timeline again. And it does a little bit of change down below, but from what I've learned, Rec 2020 is what Apple uses, but that's how you get your base off of Color Space Transform. But we're gonna use Aces because I love the way the saturation plays in Aces. So what we're gonna do is we're going to trash can this node, create a new node by pressing Option S, right? Because I'm a Mac user. People who use PC are lame. I'm just kidding. And we're gonna go ahead and slap on our Aces Transform. And it's as simple as bringing it to Apple Log, which as you can see is super crushed right now, to Rec 709, which will bring it back to reality. So now that we got our base done, we need to pay attention once again to the waveform. Now, as you can see, it's been brightened up a little bit, but I shot this a little bit underexposed. So I'm gonna name this node Aces, and I'm gonna press Option S again, and I'm just gonna name this one my exposure, EXP. Now, if this image had a lot more going on with it, I would have color graded further, but I'm gonna do just a real basic, real simple color grade here. I'm probably not even gonna touch any saturations really. So we're gonna adjust our exposure next. Now, we can use our primary color wheels. I know people like to get fancy and use the HDR wheel and utilize other ways to get your exposure, but the best color grade are the simplest ones, the ones that go unnoticed. So we're gonna stick to our primary color wheels. I'm gonna bring up the overall image using my offset, still paying attention to my actual footage and the waveform. And I believe bringing it to 29 is going to be a good starting point. Our gains is going to affect our upper regions, gammas is going to attack the in-betweens, and our lifts is going to be like where our dark areas are going to be. So I'm going to bring my gamma up a little bit more than where it's at. Adjust my gain, kind of fiddle with it a little bit, paying attention to the waveform still and looking at it with my eyes too. I'm going to adjust the lift, bring it down a little bit, and get it to a good starting point. And that's all we're really going to be doing today. We're not going to be really color grading so much as color correcting. So that's a pretty good starting point. It's still a little too dark for me. So let's bring it up. to like 37, adjust our gammas. And you know, that's pretty fair. It was a pretty low lit store. So we're gonna go move on to the next node and attack our contrast. Now we can use the contrast wheel here, or we can actually create a curve. What I'm gonna do is create an S curve, which kind of gives us a good starting point when it comes down to contrast. And we're gonna go to the middles, the high parts, and the low end. I like to start with the low regions first and get it nice and dark for the blacks, and then bring up the upper region and just expand that exposure a little bit more, and then just bring up the mid area. And that's a pretty good S curve that we got here, and we're gonna name this curve. The next thing we're gonna do is press Option S again, and we're going to kind of color balance it a little bit. Now that we created a new node, we're gonna adjust our white balance. And to be honest with you, this wall could be a pretty good starting point where a proper white balance would be, but this wall wasn't 100% white. It was actually kind of a creamish color, but it's a pretty good starting point, and I'm gonna utilize that. And I'm just gonna pay my attention towards that. Change it from waveform to vector scope to see where our white point is going to end up. Now, some people like to use the offset and adjust their white point that way. If you pay attention to your vector scope, you see the thing in the middle just kind of moving around. And some people like to do that. And some people like to just keep it simple by just messing with the temperature and the tint, which I'm going to do this time around. So I'm gonna make it a little cooler by moving it to the left and adjusting my tint, and just keep fiddling with it until I could see or presume that it's at a proper white balance. After that, we're gonna press WB, and I think that's all I'm really gonna do to this footage, just to get it back to a regular color corrected space. And as you could see with Apple Log, you kind of got a pretty good range of colors to deal with, a pretty good range to mess around with this. If you ever want to do some film emulations or things of that nature, using Apple Log is a pretty great way to do it. Now, I do have Dehancer, and I would love to do some film emulation with the iPhone 15, but it wouldn't make sense to do that with this kind of footage because it's really just, you know, shooting a bunch of iPhones in the back of people's heads. But I just wanted to get my hands on some Apple Log footage, and this is what I created with it. Hopefully this video was beneficial. If it was, give it a thumbs up and comment on it. And that pretty much wraps our tutorial. Thanks for sticking around. Love you guys. And catch you on the flip side.